This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we are covering things that make or break a real estate transaction. Today we have a special guest, Matt Singer with Good Life, and we are going to be covering the dark underbelly of inspections. These are things that if you're looking to buy or sell a house, you have to be aware of because they will cost you thousands of dollars if you don't handle this correctly. Matt, what are some things that separate, like when you've come in and you've been asked to provide an additional inspection, meaning somebody's already been to the property, already inspected it, but for whatever reason they're wanting a second opinion. What are some common things you run into that the other company didn't catch?
So the first thing is, like Good Life Inspections, we will give you a second opinion or a competitive estimate for free. So you're not going to have to pay for it again, right? Some companies will, some companies won't. We do a free inspection for a competitive bid every time.
That's huge, guys.
Yeah, it helps out. I mean, you don't want to pay for it twice. And we appreciate the opportunity to come in and give our perspective. So what I see the most as far as when people end up in situations where they either they don't trust the pest report they got, or the estimates are really high, or the recommendations are kind of extreme for repairing, is typically like on a raised foundation, there's lack of faith in what was called under the house, right? And so this is where pictures fit in. Like we at Good Life, or formerly North American, we take pictures in the sub area because we understand if you have a raised foundation, that is a focal point of that inspection because nobody's going to go under the house.
Doesn't everybody take pictures though?
No, everybody doesn't. And that's the thing.
You're kidding.
It's 2024, we should be taking pictures. You have smartphones, right? You have little cameras that are pretty durable. Why not? But they don't. And so, you could have these substantial findings, whether it's leaky toilets that have damaged the whole floor and you got to rip a bathroom floor out or something, and then there's no pictures to validate that, right? And then the seller is like, well, that estimate is pretty hefty.
Yep.
Or
the buyer.
Yeah. And how come we don't have any pictures of it? So, I mean, that's something that we focus on. If we're going to go into a house, we're going to take pictures so that people can at least have a frame of reference to understand what we called. Right. And so what I see a lot as far as, what can be overturned in a second opinion is there are conditions. One of them is milled beetles, where the tree before it was milled had a beetle infestation. They cut it down, they season it, so the beetles die. But there's evidence when they mill it, they cut across these galleries, and it looks similar to what a beetle infestation would be. Now, beetles are a moisture-related pest, not like termites, and they can be difficult to find. But because they're moisture related, there's a smell. I mean, if you've been doing this a long time, you kind of know when to be alert. Mm-hmm. And you'll have companies call that milled beetle, which isn't an active wood destroying condition. It's a previous condition that's just showing up when they milled it. And they'll call that as an active beetle condition, which requires a fumigation, the most expensive fume. It's a 5-day tent. To make sure.
So when the circus comes to town, that's because milled beetles?
Yeah, and you're getting all 3 rings, like with the beetles. So, and then you have to do something about the moisture. And so usually there's a vapor barrier or some kind of moisture control recommendation. They can get upwards of, $6,000 to $8,000 to correct a beetle condition. And I've seen plenty of reports where the first inspector called beetles and has a large estimate because of the beetles, and then go under there and find out it's milled beetle. The sub area is perfectly dry. There's no excessive moisture, and it's really not an accurate, it's not an accurate depiction of the conditions under the house. And they don't have pictures of it. So there's no way for anybody to look at the pictures and go, oh, okay, I see, right? Because some agents that have been around the block, right, they know, they've dealt with this before. So, I mean, this is another reason why I tell agents, or I recommend to agents, like if you have a pest inspector you trust, stick with them. Stick with that person, ride to die. Mm-hmm. Like, Good Life, we pride ourselves on our relationships. We try to form relationships with agents just because we understand how they do business. And, there's certain things that we do that we have to do. What I tell people is findings are facts. So we just have to find the stuff. The recommendations to repair them are subjective. Mm-hmm. And if you have an inspector who's invested with your agent and your clients, they're going to do what they can to do what's best for everybody.
Yep.
And so it's, I have a vested interest in your business because I want you to look good. And I also want to make my company look good as well.
Yep. And there's a couple of takeaways that I got from hearing about this Meal Beatles situation, or just inspectors in general. One is that you do the free re-inspects. So if anything looks fishy, if anything's off, whether you're a buyer or a seller, call Good Life, and they almost said North American. Call Good Life, and they'll come out and do the inspect for free. It costs you nothing. It could save you thousands and thousands of dollars. That's thing number one.
Yep.
Thing number two is, why are people not taking photos? Like, I'm still hung up on that you can say, hey, there's $10,000 in repairs that need to be made. Okay, show me the photos. Oh, I can't. It was too dark.
It's a lot of trust. I don't agree. I mean,
if somebody changes the brake pads on my truck and they say, hey, you need new brake pads, I'm like, okay, show me the old brake pads.
Correct.
Oh, they're in the trash. What are you talking about? Like, why did you do that?
Yes.
Show me the brake pads. Like, prove to me that I need new brake pads.
Yeah, and show it to me before you fix it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. If you end up having to negotiate out repairs in escrow period, and you have all these findings, thousands of dollars of repair in the sub area, but nobody showed you any proof of that it's really there. I mean, that's, you're taking a leap of faith and you're exposed.
Oh, and it just hit me too, but you were talking about like realtors working together with the inspectors and with their clients and doing what's right. When you're buying a house, sometimes that buyer's agent might bring an inspector along, and sometimes, well, most people don't realize. So when we talk about, hey, this can make or break a transaction, this can cost or save you thousands of dollars, it's this moment right here.
Leverage.
In the request for repairs, right? So there's the initial offer process where you're, hey, I'll bid more than the other person. Hey, my offer is strong. I'll put this much money down. You get the house under contract. Boom. Okay. Then there's a second negotiation that takes place. Seasoned agents know, hey, well, let's get our offer accepted, and then let's rake them over the coals in the request for repairs.
Yep.
And so that's why you need to call, like, if you're a seller and you're getting raked over the coals on the request for repairs, and you're like, that doesn't make sense. Why are they saying we need to do all this stuff? That wasn't here before. I've lived in the house. I've had no issues. We had an inspection done previously. There were no findings. Call Good Life, have them out there, and they can save you thousands of dollars.
I'm currently helping somebody with something like this.
Tell us about that. Can you share?
So it's a house in Auburn, a very nice house, huge deck. It's composite decking. Most of the framing is pressure treated, so it's weather resistant, right? It's gonna have less of an issue than a wood deck, even a redwood deck. It doesn't, like, it's more sturdy, more durable. So they had a first inspection, no pre-list. So the buyer brings in their inspector. The agent trusts him. He had a bad day. He was very aggressive. I know the guy from past experiences. So he goes out there, and it's a type of siding that's not it's a wood-based product, but it's not wood. It's a lap siding that's press board, right? An engineered wood. Mm-hmm. So, you could say it's a beefy cardboard siding.
All right.
And if you poke it in a certain way or probe it, which is what we do to check for dry rot, if you poke it in a certain way, you can have that siding fail or look like it's failed, even though it's not a wood destroying condition. Mm. And because of, I guess, his state of mind at the time, he went a little aggressive.
They look like giant lances for those of you who haven't seen them before. Like if you've watched, what was it?
The
A Knight's Tale or whatever. Yeah, they look like giant lances, and they're just shoving it into the trim all over the place. So I could see how if someone's having a bad day.
And he was going in underneath. So at the bottom of the lap, he was going in at the thin side. So, that it's weathered, and he's going to slice into it.
So he said there were findings.
And then the deck, it's already the type of material. It's not going to fungus damage. Now it had fungus growth on it, which needs to be scraped or pressure washed, but it wasn't structurally, compromised. And he essentially told the buyers that it wasn't worth it. Like that this house was a potential disaster. Like the water could have been getting in the walls and all these just alarming things, right? And the agent was smart enough to say, hey, you are my guy, but this is obviously a bad day for you. Mm-hmm. And got in contact with me. I went out there and looked at the house. It was a hefty estimate. Right now I'm working on, kind of whittling the number down to get to something that's agreeable for both sides. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't as bad as he made it seem. And some of the stuff that had been probed really wasn't damaged, and it just needs to be bondoed or wood filled. And so it's like the tale of two inspections. And he actually, at the point where they were going back and forth and it got a little contentious, he basically said, I'm not writing a report on this house.
Why?
I know your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
But so I really am the first to throw down a report on the house, but I'm the second to inspect.
Interesting.
And he was telling them it was, tens of thousands, like $30,000 to fix this.
Verbally. He's telling them verbally.
Yeah, verbally. That it's going to be really expensive. And it's a tall house. It's got 3 stories. It's built on the side of a hill. But it's, my estimate was big, but not that. And I didn't see any indication of water in the wall. So like my story was a polar opposite.
Wow. And this is something that kind of, I can't be the only guy that's frustrated with this, is sometimes it feels like an inspector comes in there and it's like they're paid on commission. It's like the more findings.
We are. Kind of.
But it's like the more findings they have, like the better they're doing their job, whether or not the finding is accurate.
Yes.
And so for somebody to come in there and there's no ramification against, like, there's no repercussions for them.
Well, we have a board, so you can't complain to the board. The Structural Pest Control Board they're our regulatory body.
Oh.
So there's only 4 states that have structural pest control boards, and those are the states with the most biodiversity, like as far as this stuff goes. So it's Hawaii, California, Texas, Florida. So they have state-run agencies that oversee us. Part of that is because we're applying pesticides around houses, right? And they want to make sure we're doing it safely. The other is because we have so much diversity as far as wood-destroying organisms that they want to make sure that we're doing our job thoroughly. And, you're talking about a purchase of a house, like even if half of society doesn't, right? So half does, they might do it once, twice in their life, and it's a lot of money. So they want to make sure that we're on the up and up. I mean, that's why we have state licenses. So, and we have to renew those licenses every 3 years because they want to make sure that we're up to snuff.
Yeah.
And so, also the free market, if you do spurious inspections and you give, outrageous estimates, agents talk.
Yep.
And you're going to get crushed. I mean, you're not going to be in business very long.
But here's the thing, that those bad actors tend to cling and they tend to find business crazy. Regardless. It's frustrating. It's just incredibly frustrating to me because I'll speak. I was talking to one guy in a cigar lounge the other day, and I was like, he's like, yeah, I try to find everything wrong, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, what if that isn't an issue? Well, it could be an issue, so I'm disclosing and I'm letting them know. And it's like, why are you saying?
There's a liability angle, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what commonly will happen with us is you do an inspection. I mean, Good Life, we have very good inspectors, right? And we try to avoid these, be proactive and not reactive. But if you have situations that you're not at least identifying, it doesn't have to be a finding, you're not noting or disclosing, they're going to negotiate however they do. The house closes and then something turns up. The first thing they're going to call the agent and say, hey, this happened. And then we're going to get a phone call and it's going to say, how come you didn't catch this? And if I would have known this was there, this is like every time.
No.
If I would have known this was there, I would have negotiated on it. Yeah. Right. So
I wouldn't have bought the house.
That's it. Yeah. And so who's liable? Right. And so, when we do an inspection, there is some liability because of that. Right. You want to negotiate on the reality of the house or the conditions. But if we don't repair it and clear it, our liability has an endpoint. You know what I mean? And so, but we don't want to see somebody get, the short end of the stick, especially when you're doing something like buying a house. Like that's supposed to be exciting. And when you end up finding something that's, malfunctioning or failing, and it costs a lot of money, usually you're pretty strapped when you move into a house.
I agree. It's just so frustrating when an inspector makes a big deal out of nothing.
The finding isn't the problem. It's the recommendation for the repair.
It's the recommendation. Right? And if the finding's even accurate.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. So the finding, you can have a lot of findings. I don't like a lot of findings because it's big reports. And that means I got to write them. Right? So I'd rather have accurate conditions, right? Mm-hmm. It's how you repair those conditions. And a lot of times they'll sandwich them into one big recommendation.
Got it.
So you get a bigger price and it's harder to justify. Like I'll have the same siding, but there'll be 3 different findings because the recommendations to repair them are different. Some can be dug out and filled. Some of them have to be removed and replaced.
Got it. Hey, so thank you so much, Matt, for the input on that. What we're going to be doing when we come back is we're going to be going over findings, common issues, how to find them, how to avoid them, and what to do if you do stumble across them. Thank you so much for listening.
Did you know that no matter what your home or pest inspection report says, Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team can help you sell your home, put it on the market? Even if you don't have the time or the money to make those repairs, they can help with that. Just go to tomdaves.com, type in your address, find out what kind of offers you would get on your home and how much you would get if you wanted a cash offer today, no matter what kind of condition your home is in. The website again is tomdaves.com, or give Johnny Jennings a call at 855-TOM-DAVES.